Hello and welcome to the 27 Minutes of Heaven we call the D1 Baseball Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Patrick Rooney. Today's episode brought to us by our good friends at Wilson. If you are in Omaha this week, you need to visit the Omaha Experience right across from the ballpark in the Village. Find Evo Shield, Louisville Slugger, DeMarini, Wilson, all under one roof. Find limited edition gloves, bats, gear, and more. It's available only during the Men's College World Series. So again, get over to the Village and have that Omaha experience. Thank you to Wilson. Love working with these guys as we get to the College World Series. I am joined by three lovely gentlemen, Kendall J. Rogers, Joseph J. Healey, Zebby Barrels, Fitty Barrels, Aaron J. Fitt. Gentlemen, good morning. Happy Saturday morning to you.
Hi, Roon.
How's it going?
Good.
You burned that midnight oil last night, huh?
Yeah, we're not here to sleep, KR. We're here to compete, right?
Yeah.
Like it's we'll catch up on sleep another time in our life. Saturday morning cartoons, like first flinch. What was your Saturday morning cartoon as a kid?
As a kid, I don't know. He-Man, Land of the Lost.
Perfect.
He-Man's a little like when I was like 4, but
Yeah.
I mean, I did watch it.
I have the power. Yeah, love it. Joe?
Recess on ABC was a good one. But then I transitioned pretty early to sports stuff. So it was NBA Inside Stuff with Ahmad Rashad, Willow Bay. You know, that was my transition.
That's a good pull.
Yeah.
That's all I can recall as well. Is this
Just the sports stuff?
That, I know I watched the cartoons. I have no recollection.
Coach Rooney all over Scooby-Doo, and then I transitioned to wrestling, WWF wrestling. For the real original gangsters.
The other
out
thing
there.
I've always thought was fascinating is I did not watch this a lot, but I remember watching like Bill Dance, like the fishing shows, and I would always tell my dad, like, how in the world does he catch fish so fast? Like when I was like 4 or 5, how's he doing this? Like I'm sitting there trying to fish for like an hour, I can't catch anything, but this guy's over catching fish left and right. And then, needless to say, I found out that it's recorded in pieces.
Yeah. Hashtag editing was happening.
The magic of television.
That's awesome. The last thing I'll share on that topic is my 10th birthday. We had my dad took me and like 6 friends to the Philadelphia Spectrum for a WWF card. I could still take you through.
You're an old school guy when you talk about the Philadelphia Spectrum.
Yes.
I'd like actually to pause, Rooney. Who was on that card?
Yeah, so George the Animal Steel versus Tony Atlas was the
Did he like rip apart the turnbuckle?
Yeah. We didn't lose the turnbuckle there, but it was amazing. So, all right, boys, speaking of amazing, we started the College World Series yesterday with 2 walk-offs. So, North Carolina, it's kind of like all they do. North Carolina walked off Virginia in game 1. And then the Vols of Tennessee and Florida State, just an epic game in the nightcap. Fitzy, I'll start with you. Any takeaways from yesterday?
Oh, what a fun day of baseball, Coach. I mean, my goodness, it's about as fun as it gets on day one in Omaha. I think it was the first time since 1947, the only time, I don't know, we've ever had 2 walk-offs on the first day of the College World Series.
I heard only time,
Only time. Incredible, and they're 2 dramatically different styles of games, too. I'm always harping on how much I like variety in the game, and I bemoaning all of the slugfest I felt like we had every week. We had a 3-2 game. We had a 12-11 game. Sign me up for that. We got a little bit of everything there. The first game, it felt like almost a little bit snoozy at times, right? But then at the end, we get that intensity. I thought the whole thing just hinged on the decision, in the 9th inning, whether or not we're going to pitch to Vance Honeycutt with Casey Cook on deck. I don't know. You want to get into this right now? Should I go? Or
go for it. Yeah.
I mean, it's just, should I go? It was a tie ball game, 2-2 in the 9th, right? You got the winning run on third base, and you got Vance Honeycutt up. He's Mr. Postseason. He's got all these heroic hits, in the regional and in the super. But he's pitchable. I mean, he's got 80 strikeouts. He's frankly a lot more pitchable than Casey Cook, who is North Carolina's best hitter. I think
and
all
had
the
3
coaches
hits yesterday.
And had 3 hits. They were all barreled up to all parts of the field, kind of just showing you how dangerous he is. Honeycutt had been 0 for that day, and Virginia felt like they had handled him okay. And so they like their chances to, take their chances against Honeycutt with a low slot, right-handed breaking ball guy. And they just hung one on the outside corner a little bit, and he hit it for a walk-off single. And, of course, Twitter was all like, oh, how could you possibly pitch this Honeycutt? He's a legend. Well, Cook's a better hitter. Honeycutt is their best player. He's dynamic. He's electric. He's awesome. But he's a lot more pitchable than Casey Cook. I thought it was the right decision. I mean, you could have walked them both and then pitched to Parks Harbor, but he's not necessarily an easy out either. And then if you hit him or you walk him, you lose the game. So I actually thought Brian O'Connor made the right decision. It was just one of those, damned if you do, damned if you don't situations.
And OC had a great responses to why he did that, right?
Yeah, I mean, he broke it down just the way I just said. I think, really.
Yeah.
I mean, he didn't want anything to do with Casey Cook.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It was all the reverence he had towards Casey Cook, and I thought it was a good point he made in the presser where hey, they faced North Carolina early in the year. Like they don't know Casey Cook because of a scouting report. They've lived it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Kendall, go ahead. What's your take?
On the first game or just all of them?
Yeah, we could do both.
Yeah, North Carolina, I think we talked about it at length yesterday, just their ability to get big hits. Obviously, they got another one yesterday, Vance Honeycutt. I thought the nightcap, I think it showed that to beat a team like Tennessee, you have to play very clean baseball. Florida State did not play very clean baseball. They missed the bag at third in a crucial situation. And I thought the impressive thing about Tennessee was they did not panic. That did not look like a team late in the game that was panicking. It looked like a team late in the game that was like, okay, well, you think you're going to beat us? Like, all right, we're still here in the fight. And so they got the big hits. I know people are going to talk about the check swing, but you had a check swing play, but you still have to get the big hits after that to win that game. So I thought Tennessee didn't flinch, even though they were a little sloppy on the mound early. Florida State did not play clean baseball, and that's ultimately why they lost the game.
Joe, go ahead.
I was impressed we're not shocked that Tennessee did what they did, right? I mean, that offense is just so dangerous. And once they rolled it over to the top, I compared it gruesomely before we went on the air of like a head wound patient bleeding out. That's like what it felt like with Florida State last night.
That's one way to start your Saturday, Joe.
Yeah. Hope you're not eating. But so we're not shocked that happened because that's just kind of what they're capable of. Yeah. But I can't help but think that might be a sign that this Tennessee team is ready to do more than they've done the last couple of times they've been here. I mean, 1-4 in their last two trips with teams that were, and their best team didn't even get here, right? So I think it's a team, at the risk of just doing a vibes take here, I think this is a team that's kind of sick of getting here and having hype and then losing and everyone going, well, you guys were paper tigers again. Like, I do think this group is sick of that. And I think it's expressed in the way they play. They still have a reputation, but they're really not that program anymore. Like, this is just kind of a normal baseball team. And they have edge. Right. They still have edge, but I think it works for them. Whereas you turn back the clock 2 years, and there were times where that worked against them, right? They were a little bit self-sabotaging sometimes with the emotion and getting a little bit out of control. This team's not that. And so, look, it's one game. You still got to play well the rest of the time they're here, but winning a game ugly like that, and it was not pretty. Like, nobody's gonna put that in the Louvre, but like, just winning ugly like that, I think, is valuable when you're trying to stay here longer than you have the last couple times you've been here.
Yeah, and Runes, you had Christian Moore hit for the cycle for the second time in World Series history. I think they said Jerry Kendall from Arizona, 1946, the only other time. Runes, that was a pretty special performance.
Yeah, actually, 1956, he was with Minnesota.
Oh, 56.
So remember, he's a Minnesota kid. He played and coached there. Then he went and coached at Arizona. So I just, that warmed my heart to bring Coach Kendall's name up. And that was awesome. So I have a couple follow-up questions on this. The Tennessee thing is fascinating. So let's just go individual player first. Is Christian Moore, as we sit here today, with big recency bias, he didn't just hit for the cycle, then he hits that double late in the game that kind of, the second the lineup turned over where Christian Moore was going to get to impact the game, it felt like that's a big problem. Yeah. And, of course, he delivered in an incredible at-bat. Is he the best player in the country?
We were talking about that last night with Chris Burke, that like, if Christian Moore rolls to this thing, and I mean, we're not expecting him to hit for the cycle every game, but I mean, if he has a great showing in Omaha, like, to us, Omaha matters. Like, how you play in the College World Series matters. So if he plays really well in this tournament, I mean, he's most definitely can win our Player of the Year award. Yeah. Absolutely.
He wasn't even a finalist for the Golden Spikes award, but I mean, he might be the best player of the country. He won the Triple Crown in the SEC and conference only games. That's unbelievable. And you just saw what he did on this stage yesterday. That ball hit the center field, home run into the wind, 117 miles an hour off the bat, dead center. And it's like, was it 440 feet?
Yeah.
I mean, are you kidding me?
On a line drive.
On a line with, in addition to, the two doubles, the triple, the single. I mean, guy is a sensation. He's unbelievable.
Yeah. Speaking to, this is a good not segue, but a good callback to NBA Inside Stuff. In the postgame, Tony Vitello compared the reaction in the dugout to Christian Moore's home run to when the Seattle Supersonics on the bench would react to a Sean Kemp dunk.
Love that.
Where like they would just go, they couldn't believe it, and they were just like be in shock and kind of like, oh my God, what did we just witness?
That's a great comment.
That's a great comment. And by the way, I was a huge Sean Kemp fan growing up. Had multiple Kemp jerseys, kept posters on the wall.
Did you have a Cavs?
I did not take you as a Sean Kemp guy. I took you as what was the who was the big tall white center? Sean
Frank Bukowski? I don't know.
Sean Bradley?
Yeah, Sean Bradley.
No. Sean can't get
Sean Bradley.
I love those guys.
You got to invoke a Jerry Stackhouse or something, right?
Big Greg Ostertag.
Rasheed
guy.
Wallace? Come on.
I was never a Tar
Rashid.
Heel guy growing up. No.
Yeah,
Really?
Vince Carter? I mean, Vince Carter's
Sean
tweeting
Kemp
about
was my guy.
Diamond
I'm just
Hills.
telling you. That's
Okay.
amazing.
So now I'm a Christian Moore guy.
No, that's amazing. So Christian Moore, it's going to be one of the greatest seasons ever in college baseball to win no awards. Like he's going to win. He didn't win SEC Player of the Year.
Well, he could still win the D1 Baseball Player of the Year
Kurt
award.
Reed.
Absolutely.
The biggest award of them all.
Kurt
Come on.
Reed, the Kurt Reed Leadership Award.
This might be the real opportunity for the Kurt Reed Award to establish itself as
By the way, I did see. I have no idea who it was, but I did have somebody tweet at me that somebody didn't make him a first-team All-American. Like, wait, how is this possible?
Well, I guess it plays the same position as Pisano, right?
Yeah, but he's got to be your DH, right?
He's got to be.
All right, here's my second question for you guys based on yesterday. Florida State, this is personal for Link Jarrett to win a national championship. He was here 3 times as a player for Mike Martin, and they couldn't get it done his freshman year. They were the number 1 overall seed. They went 1-2 that year. It feels personal. And like the history of Florida State coming here and not winning the national title is well documented. I just feel like Link Jarrett's going to be able to change that. However, here we are, and they're 0-1 in the College World Series.
Yeah.
So what's your guys' take on that? Does that feel like there's something about Florida State that's just preventing this? Keeping in mind in '99 they were 1 win away, right? They were in the final game. Does it feel like this is a different version of Florida State, or does it feel a little bit of the same old song?
I'm going to go on record and saying that Link Jarrett will win a national championship at Florida State. I didn't think they were unprepared last night. They had a couple of little mistakes here and there, obviously that could have turned the tide of the game. But I mean, let's not forget they were 1 pitch away from winning the game.
A check swing gets called
so
differently.
I just feel like looking at Florida State and going, oh man, are they? I know you're not saying this, but like, are they cursed or anything like that? Like, I don't think so. I mean, they were 1 pitch away against Blake Burke from winning a game against the top overall national seed and a juggernaut. I think they're going to be fine.
Yeah, I'm not sure this team is the team that, even if they win yesterday, like I'm not sure this team is the team that's going to do that. But yeah, I don't think there's anything inherent to Florida State that keeps them. Like I've long held that. Like there's no fault of Mike Martin that I think kept them from winning a national title. I think that's just baseball. However, I will say, I do think that is something that as a program you internalize a little bit. So let's whether it's this year or another year, if Florida State does get to the business end of this deal, I do think that's a situation where your coaching staff understands the weight of it.
Mm-hmm.
Your fan base certainly understands the weight of it, and that can be a recipe to play a little tight and be a little bit too wound up. So I think it could be a factor if they get to that stage, but I don't think there's just some sort of thing about Florida State that keeps them from getting it done.
Yep.
I think historically, Runes, the way they've built their program, they're always very offensive. They always took their walks, and that part always stood out. But there were various times where the defense would be shaky. They wouldn't prioritize defense when they built their teams or power pitching. And a lot of pitchability guys, low slot jokers, not necessarily power guys, which I think are very helpful to have in Omaha. This year, I thought maybe it was a little different because Link has put such emphasis on building the defense. They're a very good defensive team. They didn't show it yesterday. And they have a dude atop the rotation who wasn't at his best yesterday, Jamie Arnold, but still gave him a chance. I talked in yesterday's show about how I thought the bullpen was actually a lot better than numbers showed, and then they went out and lost the game. I mean, that's disappointing. It felt like watching them in Clemson, where you just kind of you could see it coming and you couldn't take your eyes away. It was tough, but for me, the big moment was, hey, you can't walk Cannon Peebles. You bring in your guy Oxford, and the first thing he does is walk Peebles, and that kind of sets the table, allows them to turn the lineup over. You get back to Moore, and then you feel like this is trouble because they don't have like that real guy after Whitaker, and then Whitaker was spent clearly in the ninth inning. They don't really have like a true stop. They don't have a Dalton Pence like North Carolina has, which is such a huge advantage. Or Snead for Tennessee, we saw yesterday, was really good. And so that said, I mean, I thought it was strike 3 that pitch to Burke.
Yeah,
we were debating it with a couple other guys last night, baseball guys, and they don't think it was quite so cut and dry. There's not really the check swing is one of those things. It's like the catch in football or whatever. I thought it was obviously a swing. I don't know what you guys thought. What'd you think?
I mean, it's a 50-50 call. Yeah. They call it a strike more often than they don't. It almost felt like the third base umpire didn't want to be the person that terminated the game.
Yeah.
And but I think to your point, like, hey, if that gets called differently, like you said, Kendall, it's a different conversation. Yeah. I think at the end of the day, the strike zone did feel tight yesterday, which means, and that's fine. Like it is what it is. But if you don't have an arm with stuff that works in the zone, you got a problem. And that felt ultimately to me like Florida State's next fix is You need some bullpen arms that are not trickery. It's like you got to be able to stuff that whatever pitch that is in the strike zone and create outs. So
they've got a lot of breaking ball guys, and I think that's still very valuable in college baseball. You can win a lot of games with spin, but ultimately in Omaha against a team like Tennessee, you got to have somebody who can beat you with the real fastball. And hey, Tennessee. The bottom line, yes, Florida State wasn't sharp yesterday. Neither was Tennessee, but Tennessee just went out there and beat them in the ninth. It was hard hit balls. It was barrels, man.
Tennessee. That's they showed why they're to Kendall's point. That's why they're the number one team. All right, boys. We'll fast forward to today's game. Throughout the College World Series, throughout the summer and all year round, D1Baseball.com is your home for the most in-depth college baseball news, updates, scores, and rankings. Get game analysis, season previews, or series previews. Season previews, too. Those are amazing. Transfer portal updates, fall reports. The fall reports has got to be in here, too. My favorite part. Visit D1Baseball.com today. Kendall, do we have a code for a subscription? You got to have a subscription for the CWS.
You can still use Bracket 30 to get 30% off of an annual subscription.
Oh, Bracket 30.
A lot of transfer portal stuff going to happen over the next couple of weeks. I think the deadline is July 3rd to enter the transfer portal. Then from that point, you can make commitments. Then the coaching carousel is still spinning a little bit.
All right. The so Bracket 30, type that in at checkout, get 30% off. You can type in Kurt Reed Lifetime Achievement Award at checkout, see what that does for you. Yeah. All right, boys, let's do hard to say. Who is to say? Let's do the day game, which is NC State versus Kentucky, correct? Do I have that right? Yep. Correct. Florida A&M's tonight. So we believe it will be Trey Poozer versus Sam Highfill. Fitzy, you go first. What say you about this game?
I think it's a fun one. Maybe one of those games that hasn't maybe been as hyped as the other three games in the first round, I feel like. But I'm very intrigued by it. I'm fascinated to see how Kentucky does here. First ever Omaha game as a program. They're going to be jacked up, but it also just feels like this team is so mature and they have weathered all the postseason stuff that comes along with being at home for regional and a super. They played so well in the super regional guys. I can't get over how well they pitched. I mean, holding Oregon State to 3 hits in 2 games is unbelievable. And to me, that bodes well, for their stock heading into Omaha. But I mean, it feels like a team that's built so well for this ballpark. We've talked about that. They can manufacture offense a variety of different ways. They still have power, but they're one of the least power-dependent teams in this field. And we saw yesterday in the early game, especially with that wind blowing in, it's still a pitcher-friendly park. You have to win with line drives and execution out here. And so I think they're maybe a little bit better built for that than NC State. But NC State can play that style as well. They're also not just a sit back and hit the 3-run homer kind of a club. They're not afraid to lay down some bunts, especially in the bottom half of the order. And in Highfield's, he's the only guy here that the only guy pitching today anyway who's pitched in this setting, right? I mean, he pitched here in 2011. He pitched great. And now this is kind of his chance, later, years later in his career, he gets another chance to come back to Omaha. That's pretty cool. He's just Mr. Steady, and the bullpen behind him is such a strength. We talked about that before with North Carolina's bullpen and Pence, who, by the way, was just nails yesterday. 3 1/3, scoreless, just what he does. State has that going for him as well.
KR?
Yeah, I go with NC State in this matchup. But, obviously it's hard to go against a team who allowed 3 hits in 2 games against Oregon State against that offense and Travis Bazzana. But I think you look at NC State and the way they played in Athens last weekend, I think they allowed 6 runs in the 2 wins against Georgia. And to do that against Georgia's offense at Foley Field is incredibly impressive. You look at Duden and Smith and the job those guys did at the back end of the bullpen last weekend. They did a really nice job. They've got pieces back there offensively, as Aaron mentioned. They've got a really good offense, and they've got big time power. And it looks like the wind's kind of whipping around a little bit today. So maybe this park plays a little bit more homer friendly than it did, maybe or does usually. So I like NC State, but if you look at Kentucky, they've played incredibly well, especially the second half of the season. And Trey Poozer was obviously excellent last weekend. So I think Kentucky plays well, but I think NC State wins it.
Joseph.
The thing I'm looking for here is, does Kentucky try to turn the chaos slider up to 11? Because NC State's not played them. And they've got tape, right? But if you've not experienced Kentucky's got guys on first and third, and literally the entire playbook is open to them, what that can do to a defense. Now, NC State, just historically and this year, pretty fundamentally sound team, good defensive club. They're good behind the plate with Cozart, so you're not really going to probably trick him. So that does make it a little bit harder for Kentucky, but it is one of the deals. And unless you've played Kentucky, I don't think you totally get a full picture of what it is to deal with that.
Yeah.
So I wonder if at least early on, Kentucky's really just like total gas pedal to the floor. Let's try to like make things happen and see if we can create some chaos. So that to me, that's my big storyline going into this game is how does NC State deal with the Kentucky of it all?
I think I have a couple questions on this. The Kentucky, it's such a big deal. They're the only SEC program that had never been here.
Yeah.
And, SEC programs to me typically play really well in Omaha because every weekend's Omaha for them, right? Like the environments they're playing in week in and week out are so hellacious that I'm always shocked at how the SEC players, you look them in the eyeballs and they just look not affected by this. But Kentucky, I'm interested in seeing, is that different for them because it's their first time? Or is it the same because they've been playing in the same SEC that everybody else is, and it hasn't affected them the last 2 years? The other thing that I'm curious about, yesterday confused me in this regard. The first game felt like, okay, it's the same old Charles Schwab Field, same old Chuck Box, where if you got a fly ball pitcher, you're just fine, right? Like nothing's leaving here, etc. The night game, I felt like, gosh dang, if you don't have
played much different.
Yeah. And so, like when I look at Trey Poozer can miss bats, but Highfill particularly, I think the way the field plays is important to him. And maybe Lampkin better than we do, Kendall, and let's use that as the transition to the next game. But yeah, what is Lampkin like? Is it pitch to contact or not necessarily?
Yeah, he's going to pitch to contact a lot, but the key for him is his ability to keep his slider low in the zone. If he can do that, which he's been a little hot and cold on that. If he can do that, he's actually pretty tough to get really hard contact off of. So just kind of looking at that game overall, just kind of segueing over to A&M and Florida. I think the big key to this game for me is, frankly, A&M's lineup against Liam Peterson and Florida's pitching staff. The one thing I will say is from watching Clemson, or watching them play Clemson, watching them play Oklahoma State, the one common denominator between those two teams is they're both really aggressive offensively. And I think when you look at A&M, they're one of those teams that will literally take every count to 2-2, 3-2. They'll foul off 5 pitches. And so they're going to have your pitch count to 50 to 60 by the 3rd or 4th inning. Like Aaron said yesterday, like A&M will kind of drive you crazy watching them because they are not afraid to make the game last 4 hours by taking a lot of pitches. So I think Liam Peterson, his ability to throw strikes is going to be paramount today. I think for A&M, I don't necessarily love the matchup with Lampkin against Florida and Cags, but Chris Cortez has been absolutely unhittable. And as soon as Lampkin gets in trouble, they will go straight to Cortez. And if you go look at what Cortez did against Florida and Gainesville earlier this year, it wasn't great for Florida. So, I think the big key for Florida is they need to have some sort of extension run wise and lead wise before Cortez and potentially Ashenbeck come into the game. Because once those two guys come in the game in this ballpark, I like A&M's chances.
Yep. Hey, before Joe, you go, I forgot our second read.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, let's go. Let's do this. You can hear more from D1 Baseball on the D1 Baseball podcast all year round. It's myself, Kendall, Fitzy, Joseph J. Healey, break down teams, talk with coaches, keep you up to date on all things college baseball. You hear exclusive SEC content with Highway to Hoover, ACC content with the ACC Baseball, etc., or the ETC, as the cool kids like to call it. All the oddities in college baseball with the shock factor. That's amazing. Download the D1 Baseball podcast, part of the SiriusXM podcast network, right now on the SiriusXM app or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss a minute.
Runes, we're going to be in trouble if we keep adding podcasts because our ad read's going to be like 700 words.
But as long as we get to hear Runes say etc. every time, that excites me. We'll work on that pronunciation off.
ACC etc. is Darren Vaughts in the house.
Yeah,
that's
donuts.
Right. Thanks,
TV.
Darren.
Yeah, it's like adult. I say adult, and so yeah, TV. I need coaching on. Et cetera, is that how
there
you
go?
Yeah, et cetera.
ETC.
Okay, Joe, bail me out. Talk
Runes
about
is
this
an
game,
NCAA
please.
guy. He says NCAA instead of NCAA.
Oh, that's fighting words.
I kind of think there's famous last words here. Good, well done, Joe. But just I kind of think, get ready.
Big conviction.
There's a non-zero chance that Justin Lampkin pitches well. He's not without talent. He's not without ability. We've seen him go out there and throw the ball well. This is not a guy. I compared it on my show this morning. I did about he's not a freshman with 12 innings under his belt. He's had good outings. He knows what he's doing. It hasn't gone great all year, but I do you can pitch to Florida. There's a lot of holes in swings in that lineup. Outside of Cags, there's a lot of holes in that the swings in their lineup. Like, so you can, if you've got a good game plan and you're executing, you can pitch to them. Let's not forget, like, this was a team that kind of got carved up by Missouri, and like, no disrespect to Missouri, like they did have some arms this year, but that's a team that was last placed in the SEC, and they worked around Florida's lineup. That Coach J factor, But, so who's to say that Justin Lampkin doesn't have something like a day kind of like that, where he can pitch to this lineup and balls are dying 380 feet away from home plate in center field, right? So I think we're being a little bit flippant almost with like expecting Justin Lampkin to fail in this spot. He might, but I also think there's a non-zero chance he goes out and pitches well.
I just think this A&M's offense travels, their approach travels, as Kendall was talking about. Even without Braden Montgomery, they're going to hit. They're going to drive you crazy. You're going to throw a true freshman at him who's got real stuff, but maybe not pinpoint command. I just think you're going to have a hard time slowing down that A&M offense. I think they're going to come out here and show out, guys. And I just love their bullpen. I think it's a huge advantage. Again, and I know Neely is a weapon for Florida as well, but that Cortez Aschenbeck combination is just superb.
Kendall, what will A&M do with? I know we saw a little bit of it last weekend, but Montgomery's out. Who goes where?
So Lavalette was in right, Chestnut was in center. They moved Caden Kent to second.
And Chestnut was playing second before.
Correct. And
is he a junior college transfer? Or
yeah, he's a JC guy.
So obviously he's not very tall.
It's not a strong arm in center. That's the one thing. I mean, that's the other big storyline for A&M is no Braden Montgomery, and you kind of led into this with this question. But when you look at A&M, when you look at Montgomery's last month, like he wasn't great offensively. I think his biggest loss out here is defensively, because in this park, if you hit a ball up against the wall to right field to Braden Montgomery, like it's a single. Like he's going to throw you out if you try to say second base. So keep an eye on Florida today, kind of testing Jace Lavalette a little bit at second to see if he can, throw some guys out like Braden does.
Yeah, and Kentucky, NC State, Florida, and A&M, if you're listening, we only do walk-offs around here. So get your act together, and we need to finish
Stay
this
on
game.
script, please.
Yes, let's do that. All right, everybody enjoy the day of baseball. We will catch you next time on the D1 Baseball Podcast.